OBS is giving me a hard time. Hold on. Bam! All right, we got you in there, and I think your mic is hot. Fucking as are you, Kennedy. Jesus. Like what? Dude.
This is part of my shtick, you know?
Oh my
Being
gosh.
the best looking leftist.
Oh. Well, you're putting us all to shame, and you know, good for you. Good for you, Kennedy. Okay. So before we get going, I do want to ask you if you have any questions about anything about what we're going to be doing today. Okay. Yeah. I sent you the format, and so I guess we can like begin. This is where I'll go ahead and like clip the beginning. Okay. So here we go. Wow, Kennedy, like so good to be with you today. You look goddamn fantastic. How are you?
Oh, thank you.
What's up?
I'm all right. How are you?
You know what? Yeah, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, and I'm glad that you are my neighbor. But what we get to do today is chit chat with you, introduce you to the audience, and get to know you a little bit better. As you know, we've invited you here in the spirit of building leftist unity, strength, and power. And
good stuff.
In that spirit, I really appreciate you being willing to chat with me today. Really excited to get going with the talk. So what we get to start with first is, where are you now? What do you do? Where can people find you? And give yourself the big shout out.
Great. Well, thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate the invitation. My name's Kennedy Cooper. I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I do a lot of different things, which we can get into some of the different details of my many lives. But I am, sort of an entertainer, leftist broadcaster of sorts. I don't necessarily like to think of myself as like a journalist or an investigative reporter. I'm more of somebody who tells jokes about shitty things I saw on the news and, then slips in a little bit of history when you're kind of like already laughing. But that's about as far as I'm really trying to take it, and ultimately, I honestly I don't necessarily want to do just pure politics. But and I'm kind of branching into some other things, but it'll always be from a leftist perspective. And so, like the Sentai Truther Club is something that I already do with Grav, which is a Power Rangers podcast. We talk about Power Rangers from a very explicitly leftist perspective, but it's more of a show about having fun, And I kind of want to do more of that too.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I relate to that at least on a certain level. I try to make my stream just at least, a fun place to hang out and relax. I save the big brain shit for others. That's what we say. Let's talk a little bit more. Any other current projects? You are with the project Not Safe for Wonks?
Yeah. I've got a lot of projects. Not Safe for Wonks is my big thing I've been doing for almost 2 years now with Brandon Buchanan and also with Rachel Kahn and April, who's our Zoomer host who shows up sometimes. And, that's really fun. And we just came back from taking our first serious break after doing a lot of content, over 100 audio episodes. And also, I don't even know how many streams. We're just kind of getting back into the swing of things with a new stream on Wednesdays. And that's super fun. And we're bringing back the audio show soon, et cetera, et cetera. So. Okay. And then I do, right now it's still called The Eclectic Radical with Chris Richards. We're talking about changing the name of the show because at first I was just his guest co-host and now we're kind of enjoying working together. So that's on Monday nights and that's like that's like my most serious political show. But I try to be the person that brings a little levity to it. Chris is like history. Right. He's funny too, though.
Yeah, helps.
And then I'm doing a tabletop stream with some friends on Thursdays. That's called Rolling In It. I just have a lot going on. I'm working on a makeup show with Hell Baby from Bad Praxis podcast.
Okay.
Lots of stuff.
That's great. And I'm hearing lots of new names that I'm not quite familiar with. Hook it up. Let's get the people on the show, right?
Absolutely.
Let's spread the good word here.
If you're not having anyone on from Bad Praxis yet, let's make that happen. They're wonderful folks.
I think I've reached out. I think I've reached out to at least one, but let's get them all on. That's the big idea. That's the big idea of the show, you know?
Yeah, I love it.
I don't have to
Honestly,
agree
when
with
we
everybody.
started,
I'm sorry,
Safe
not
for
to say I
Long.
don't agree with them. I'm sorry. Go on, but yeah.
No, sorry. I was gonna say when we started Not Safe for Wonks, we had a somewhat similar philosophy of just like
Yeah.
let's just bring on lots of folks and get perspectives, get conversations going, and just build a broader perspective of what it means to be a leftist or a progressive or whatever. Not everybody that comes on our show calls themselves a leftist. That's the whole thing. But
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I have a similar mentality, left adjacent, So now, if there's anything we left out, we can shoehorn it in later. Don't worry about it. It's whatever's clever. And later we'll be able to ask you what's grinding your gears. But I'd love to dig into the format a little bit more.
Sure.
I'd love to dig into your leftward bound journey, Kennedy. This is a discussion about your pathway to the left, or left adjacent. At the very least, you're here on the show, and I call myself a leftist. So you don't have to define yourself in any way, but you're encouraged to do so if you'd like to. And let's just start there. Yeah, what would you like to chat about?
Sure. Yeah. In some ways, I think it was kind of inevitable that I would end up a leftist, but then in other ways not. I think it's never truly inevitable, but like growing up poor, dealing with being queer and struggling to come out and not getting much support from people. And then also being really vehemently anti-war from a young age. And I started doing anti-war protesting around the age of 12 with a student movement because that was around the time the Iraq War started. So I think all of those things were kind of steering me in a certain direction to some extent. Now, certainly plenty of people can have all those factors and still end up a conservative or something else or a liberal or whatever. And I certainly flirted with other ideologies over time. I would say around 19, especially, like I was kind of like a borderline libertarian, not like in a very serious way, but I was just kind of like, corporations are fine, whatever. Just I didn't really like have like strong opinions about that kind of stuff in particular still. I was anti-war, I was pro rights for lots of people and etc. But again, I didn't necessarily have like a deeper understanding of imperialism, violence of the state, the violence of capitalism, etc. So that would kind of come later as I got a little older. And police brutality was a big part of that. There was a young deaf man that was shot to death by the police in North Carolina, where I was living for a time in my early 20s. And that story really affected me powerfully. And that's when I started to really question more of like, how many of these systems are fixable, I think.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I feel similarly. So you get to that question, are they fixable? And for me, it was the answer to that question regarding a lot of different specific things that made me go, no, they're not fixable. And I'm assuming you had a similar experience.
Yeah. So that incident with police brutality, I want to say that was around 2013.
Okay.
I was already kind of leaning towards being an anarchist in some respects because I was already kind of living a semi-anarchist lifestyle. I had been in punk bands and doing squatting projects. I lived on a farm where we literally moved into like an empty concrete building with just some knuckleheads and started renovating all this stuff and like, just doing real like out there, real kind of crusty punk stuff. But again, I still didn't really have like theory or like a greater political conception. It was just like I didn't like the system. I dropped out of college. I quit working corporate jobs and I had moved on to this more like I said, kind of relatively punk anarchic kind of way of living and like being in many respects, but I hadn't synthesized it into anything useful. It was just this sort of rebellion,
Yeah.
But eventually it did start to synthesize into more useful ideas, and definitely a lot of the things that you would expect, some things that you wouldn't. Definitely reading Marx and some of the typical things were important to me. And that's one of the reasons why I do lightly push the importance of theory, even if I'm sort of also kind of an anti-theory person in other respects.
Okay.
But also like religion and spirituality was important for me to discover the left, which is something I think is a little controversial to say sometimes. Maybe.
That's fascinating. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because, so I was almost a religious leader of sorts.
Oh,
I was very involved in
yes.
Quakerism, which is a fairly liberal, somewhat progressive sect of Christianity. And I had become a mildly influential youth leader at the national scale. Not youth leader in the sense of like leading people younger than me, but like being a youth person that was in leadership, rather.
Okay.
And because actually a lot of the workshops I led were very intergenerational and things like that, blah, blah. And I was doing all this stuff, but it was this funny thing where the more I learned about like the more I actually like studied religion, the less I related to these people in these religious organizations who didn't seem to be doing that. Even in this relatively liberal, progressive, kind of okay religious group, I still found that a lot of people weren't really, it was still more about the money and the power and the this and the that and the comfort and the having fun and the feeling certain ways and behaving certain ways and controlling people in certain ways, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the more I'm like just heavily studying various religious and esoteric texts, trying to become the best sort of religious leader that I can be, the more I was like, this doesn't match up with the reality of religion at all. If you really read into, now I'm not particularly exclusively into Christianity, but I'll just say, if you really read into the life of Christ, because that's one of the ones that I know the most about, that's an anarchist story. And so that will really start to change the way you think about things. If you really go deep, you got to go deep enough, though.
I like that. That seems like something I'd love to put a pin in and like dig into someday. I like to think of these interviews as, we're planting the seed, looking forward to having you back, and building off these conversations. Going deeper. So that could be a good one to come back to. That's really good shit.
I'd love to.
Fuck yeah. What else, Kennedy? Any other aspects? If you've said everything, that's fine. You can pass on any question or skip or whatever. Any other aspects of politics, be it leftist theory or other thinking, anything else, history, other personal experiences, etc., that helped to pull your mind to the left?
Yeah, definitely. So, growing up, I was definitely influenced by a lot of casual racist thinking, like a lot of white people. Pretty much every white person in this country, probably. And especially part of my childhood was in the Midwest, and it was very segregated. And it was segregated in this way where everyone thought it was a good thing. The white people thought it was good. The black people thought it was good. That was my experience in Ohio, was that you would talk to black folks in Ohio and they would say, yeah, it's good that we don't mix too much. The same that that's how deep the segregation mindset had gotten into people in like southeastern Ohio. And so I was taught a fair bit of casual racist thinking by my peers and mentors and such. And when I first originally moved to New Mexico, where I live now, that was a big part of me breaking out of that. And a lot of that had to do with being welcomed by some of the various Latino and indigenous cultures here that can be really, as long as you're respectful, can be really welcoming and glad to teach you, a different version of history that you may not have heard before and things like that. And so I started to have this much broader perspective of culture. And that was really important to me becoming the person that I am today, because if I had stayed trapped in that white bubble of Ohio, I kind of shudder to think sometimes. And so later on, when I moved back here, I started to read a lot more about pre-colonial American history, Latin American history in general, South American history, and things like that. And I would say that the most important things really for like the way I feel about leftism now were not any of these white European thinkers, but it was The Open Veins of Latin America by Eduardo Galeano, which is an incredibly powerful, upsetting but important book about what imperialism really did to the Americas. For real. No bullshit. We're not going to sugarcoat anything. And there's a lot in that book that you've never heard before, but you can go research it. And this guy certainly did before he wrote it. It's also an amazing book because Eduardo was a poet as well as a historian.
Nice.
So it's a very powerfully written book. It's just really moving as you read it. So that was really important to me. And then also just in general, learning about the Zapatista struggle. It has been my main political inspiration for the last few years. And essentially, I think of the Zapatista movement as the most ideologically sort of pure as it can be and successful leftist movement in maybe all of history.
That's fascinating. That gives me and my channel and some more to dig into, and honestly, like we've mentioned before, some more things to put a pin in and hopefully return to later so you can spell it out in detail. Part of the purpose of this channel is to create a space for bigger brained leftists than myself to come on in and share what they know. So this is exactly what we do here. So looking forward to having more and more conversations in the future. So then we get to dig into the questions here. Anything else you wanted to mention in your leftward bound journey, Kennedy?
I think that's a pretty good summation of the main points. You know, there were a lot of different factors that sort of led me to this point, and I feel like I touched on all of the really big ones. So yeah.
So now we can sort of distill those experiences a little bit. We could talk about, your projects that you're working on, things that you're focusing on in your life, and also your leftward bound journey. And if you can distill those things that you shared with me, and of course, anything more in your mind, and talk with a hypothetical younger version of yourself or someone listening in chat, what wisdom might you share given the chance? What knowledge?
Gosh, I've actually been thinking as I rolled over the big 3-0 mark last year. Now I'm 31.
Yeah.
I started to think a lot about what would I have told my 20-year-old self, because something about reaching that 10-year mark just caused that kind of reflection in me. And just go for it, and don't listen to the people telling you not to do the things that you want to do would have been the main thing, because I really should have just dropped out of high school, or at the very least not gone to college, and focused on my passions and pursuits. All of my greatest successes in my life so far have come from doing the things that I truly cared about. Whereas trying to sort of fit into the system so that I could have a safe enough job and things like that never really worked out well in the long run. And I even had a few jobs that I liked okay, but in the end, they, jobs are jobs and they never really work out. Whereas working on my own passions is something that, even if it's frustrating at times in many different ways, I'm sure you understand, it still pays off in this way where you feel good about it. You're in control and you feel good about yourself and what you're doing. And it doesn't really matter what those passions are if anyone's out there listening and trying to maybe apply this advice to themselves. And it doesn't matter if you're young or old either. It's never too late. That's another important thing that I learned. It's ironically, in my early 20s, I felt like it was already too late for me to accomplish some of the things that I'm accomplishing now. I really want to emphasize that. I really thought by the time I was 24, 25, I really had this thought in my mind, I wish I had become an internet creator or like an influencer type and made memes and made people laugh and, you know, like performed online and done that kind of stuff like I always thought about doing. But it's too late now. That was literally me at like 25. And now I'm 31 and I'm doing it and I'm getting little bits of success here and there, and it's great. There's still a long ways to go, but I want to be very grateful for all the things that I am getting out of it. And I just am like, damn, it's never too late. It's never too late. Whatever it is that you want to do in this life, go do it now, and it's not too late. It is too late if you wait till you die.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great shit. Yeah. I mean, I didn't start streaming until I was 36. I'm 35. Always wanted to do that, you know. I like how you said as well. Don't sort of like don't think about the people who are telling you not to do it, even if they're not really telling you not to do it. That you could sort of see yourself like trying it, and then they're criticizing you, and it's all happening in your head, right? So like in a sense, they're telling you not to do it. You got to ignore them. Like there's going to be people, if you're fucking genuine and if you just do it from the heart, and there's lots that goes into it, but people will jive with you and you will find your crowd. You just got to put it out there. Yeah.
You just got to do it and just keep doing it. Just stay steady on it. And, you know, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. That was a mistake I made a lot when I was young. I have a lot of unfinished projects that could have been great. Some of them could have been really amazing. And what did I do? I didn't finish them. Or I didn't follow through with them to the extent that I needed to. I tried to be like a music review YouTuber way before it was even cool to do something like that. And if I had stuck with it, who knows? You know what I mean? I mean, at that time that I was starting it, Anthony Fantano was an absolute nobody. So you have to wonder, right? But I did like 2 episodes. I got a little bit of criticism and I just never did it again. Because I was so obsessed with the idea of, well, because of this criticism, okay, I've got to make it so much more perfect now. When I should have been shutting those people out and just continuing to make it. Because that's the important thing, is continuing to make it. Something that Brian from Street Fight Radio told us early on for Not Safe for Wonks, that I now tell new podcasters and new creators when they come to me, is just make 10 episodes before you even worry about anything, before you even try to make a big deal out of this, before you just make 10 episodes, just do it, you know? And that's what, like, Brian was like, after you have at least 10 episodes in the can, I'll come on your show. And we didn't end up having him on till like episode 60, I think. But just because of a lot of different, mostly us, honestly, our schedule. Yeah, like he was right, because we didn't even have our footing really until episode 30 of the audio show. And then we didn't realize that we were going to be a video show then either. Although we like to talk a lot about the fact that, you know, we didn't start as a video show because we couldn't afford it.
Yeah, it's pricey either way you do it, right? The price is either you pay the StreamYards people, you pay a producer, or the price is you learn it yourself, which takes a lot of time. It's going to cost you. But it's doable. It's doable, folks. Y'all do a great job. I think you use the StreamYards. I remember early in my career, I was like, wait, how do they do? Because I think the video, getting video in and pulling it in and doing the streaming, that's one of the hardest parts of doing what I do. And I remember like going, oh shit, how do they do that? It looks great. Like it moves smoothly and everything. It had my kinds of moving transitions, and I had to reach out and y'all spilled the beans for me. And I was like, oh, StreamYards. And it didn't work out for me because I work within OBS. That's where I do all my magic. But it was good. It was fascinating. And of course, I appreciate you being willing to share it as you are today. For sure.
And I mean, I'll say, I mean, you know, the work that you put into doing it on the OBS side does give you like a really impressive final layout that we couldn't accomplish something quite as fancy in StreamYard. But we're not that great at this stuff, and StreamYard makes it easy.
Yeah. It looks so good. I thought you were doing it. I was literally convinced. But I was like, oh, StreamYard's nice. But that's the thing. People, lots of different kinds of content creators out there. I lean into the graphics and everything like that, the OBS, etc., because it's actually, it's sort of like it suits me, and I learned it relatively quickly. I was able to pick up a lot of things really quickly, and also it does sort of tie in with some other skill sets that I have. Other people don't necessarily have those skill sets, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't enjoy whatever success that I have, or if you have a different skill set that Kennedy has, you're not gonna. It doesn't mean you won't experience the same success that they have. It's just you got to find what you do and lean into that. Do what you. What I think we'll get into more streamer tips later, but I'd say do what you do well and avoid what you can't do, or figure it out. And if it's a severe weakness, figure it out and actually do some troubleshooting. But. Okay.
And at the end of the day, you'll be happier doing that stuff even if you don't get massively successful. I mean, we know that the capitalist system is rigged and we're not going to make it. I don't want it to sound like I'm a rise and grinder with this stuff, but it's more of just a fact of like, if you're following your passions, you will be happier. And if you're happier doing your work, well, there's a slightly higher chance that you're going to be better compensated for it just in general because of how things tend to go. But it's not really about all that at the end of the day. Like, I would rather be making minimum wage and just following my passions than working for someone else and making, $16, $20, $30 an hour, or even, I mean, I've occasionally made even more for like high-end consulting. And it doesn't matter if I'm making, like $75 an hour is like on the upper end of what I've made on a consulting gig before. It doesn't matter even if you're making money that good. It's still annoying working for somebody else. Whereas, again, like being just like working at home, eating rice, a lot and like simple meals to like make it work because I'm like not bringing in a ton of money, but I'm getting to do the things that I want. It's just better.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Doesn't taste as good, though. Yeah. Ups and downs, right? You got to sometimes you got to find those ups and downs. And then hopefully down the road you get the nice meals every day. We'll get there, Kennedy. We'll get there.
Yeah.
Nice meals every day. For everyone. Yeah, that's what we believe in, really.
Yeah. And I like to cook for myself, so that helps too.
That is nice. I bet you're a good cook. I don't like it, so I'm not good at it. Okay, so lovely. Now we get to move on here into the leftist inquisition. Everyone loves the leftist inquisition, and it's because it's the best. It's the best questionnaire in town. If you want to skip any question or pass, you can do so without hurting my feelings. I don't care. It's just questions. However, I guess, are you ready? You ready to go, Kennedy?
Sure.
All right, here we go. Kennedy, what is your favorite word?
Oh, wow. That's challenging, actually.
Okay.
I would say, well, it depends on if we just mean like, what's my favorite word to just use colloquially, or what's like a really interesting word that I love. Because if we're being like scholarly, there's this obscure word that I love, bibelo, which means like a trinket.
Bibelo. It is a good word.
Just some bibelo, just
bibelo.
Some stuff, just some weird junky
bibelo.
stuff,
You got some, okay, you got some bibelo. Okay, anything good though? Nope. Okay. Yeah,
but for a
bibelo.
more,
yeah,
just something that I use all the time. That's a word that I like to advocate for. I'm a big advocate for y'all, and I like to put that one out there because there are some real y'all haters out there, I don't understand you people. You're so wrong. I don't understand y'all.
I think they're in chat. I don't get it either. And it's made me second guess myself for a long time. I enjoy the word as well.
It's useful. It's practical. I like lazy sort of things that combine words or shorten words. I also say stuff like tryna a lot.
Tryna, yeah.
Yeah, or finna. I spent a lot of my life in the South. My mom's from the South. And I learned to just like that sort of thing in general. But y'all in particular, it's not just easier to say and convenient, but it's actually clearer.
Yeah, than saying you all.
Well, than saying you.
You. Yeah.
Because people will say you, singular or plural.
Yeah. You. Me? Who, me? Yeah, you all is like, oh, us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you all just
Y'all.
doesn't sound, people think that sounds better? What?
No. Y'all.
No.
I once said y'all in a gas station in the suburbs here near Chicago, and they're like, are you from Texas? And I'm like, just northwest suburbs out by the IKEA. by the Woodfield Mall. So, yeah, I like y'all. It's a good word. I embraced it, and then I don't know. Some people on Twitter made me second guess myself. It was this crazy thing. I feel like you've like allowed me to say y'all again. So thank you.
Good.
Yeah, y'all good company. All right, a least favorite word, Kennedy.
I think this one's kind of a classic, but I'm definitely in that moist is a word that shouldn't exist camp.
Yes. Awesome.
Terry Pratchett used it as a name in one of his novels, and that's the only time it ever sounded kind of right, was as a ridiculous fantasy name rather than a word that we're actually supposed to use in real life.
There's not a lot of good words to describe what that's trying to describe, though.
I think damp is okay. Like it sounds a little grungy, but it should sound a little grungy, right? Because you're describing something grungy.
I think that's part of the point of the word moist. It's just sort of like it's like a double whammy. It's sort of a triple whammy too, because the diphthong, the oi, is like ew. Yeah. It's just a terrible word all around. But what about the soggy? Soggy's not that good.
Not great.
Not good.
No.
All right. The next question is the drug, vice, or guilty pleasure question. Do you have one, or you can name one of each? A favorite?
Gosh, I'm a hedonist.
Hit it. Do it.
First of all, it's 420, so I'll mention, of course, cannabis it has been a big part of my life for a long time. It's definitely one of my absolute favorite vices. I'm high most of the time. I'm high right now.
Cheers.
That's just how I roll for the most part. There are some like medical reasons that I smoke a lot too, but at the end of the day, I think even if I didn't have those, I would probably be high all the time. So that's definitely a big one. Okay. Also, I'm actually, I would say I'm the most responsible gambler that I know, but I do like gambling. I've never made a foolish decision gambling in terms of, like, I've never pulled out the extra money when it's like I'm already should be done. I'm just done, But I do really like gambling. I know that's an iffy one. A lot people feel all type of way about, and they should, because it's kind of fucked up.
Can be.
On a lot of different levels. I can't really explain what it is about it. I just know that, like, if you tell me that you're having like a cheap buy-in poker night, I'm there. A lot of the time. I love stuff like that. That one definitely feels like a guilty pleasure in leftist circles because it's sort of inherently tied to capitalism in some respects.
Super predatory.
Yeah, exactly. And to be clear, like, I don't like going to casinos or things like that. I literally like, alleyway poker. And if that sounds like an exaggeration, believe me, it is not. The old game that we had before pandemic was literally in like this alley cul-de-sac thing, just like where behind these like little apartments. And we'd like put up just like hardware lamps so we can see. And I'll just say in general, I'm pretty drug positive as a person. Now, I have my limits. I've lost a lot of friends to terrible addiction, and I definitely am glad to talk about the reasonable limits of drug use. But I think that people have a natural inclination to get a little bit outside of what goes on in here, and that intoxicants help with that, and that it's not weird that people want to get fucked up.
No. Yeah, it's pretty natural. It's the basis of like human life is to search for different consciousnesses, search for different experiences, and
Way to put it.
Oh boy, does that help? Absolutely. Based. Kennedy, next question. Sound or noise. Is there one that you love?
I assume you mean like a non-musical sound?
It can be musical. I don't care.
Oh, okay.
I'll make the rules here. I guess I do.
I really love FM synthesizers. It's the type of digital synthesis that was, well, it's sort of semi-digital synthesis that was popular in the 80s that produced like that bass for the Seinfeld theme was made on an FM synth that really, it sounds like someone's playing a real bass. No, it's an FM synth.
It's a synth. It's a key synth. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You could hear it.
They do a lot more than that, though. They actually are, in my opinion, even better for like kind of very spacey, bizarre, futuristic, twinkling kinds of sounds and things like that.
Yeah.
And I feel like the potential of FM synthesis has not been fully discovered. I think analog synths get all the love in general most of the time. Everyone wants a Moog or something like that. And I get it. But FM synthesis, there's a deep well there that is still far from fully tapped.
Hey, that's fascinating. And that ties nicely into what you mentioned earlier. My brother got into that type of equipment, but I think he went analog. So I'd love to chat with him someday about that. And he also started late. He started late in his life with sort of this new hobby, and he's just really dug in. He's got this really cool room where he's got it all set up, and one thing that makes me jealous is really good lighting. So I'm trying to up my lighting game over here.
I've been working on my lighting. I feel you.
You're set up so cozy and lovely with the plants and everything. It's darbsable. Is there a sound? I'm sorry. Is there a sound or a noise, Kennedy, that you hate or intensely dislike?
I can't say that there's actually that many sounds that I'm super opposed to, because I like a lot of weird, like music concrete type stuff where just like using bizarre samples and things and like weaving those into like the music is like an inherent part of it, or things like that. I listen to not like a ton of like noise music, but a little bit and things like that sometimes. And just some fairly like out there and avant-garde stuff. Not all the time. I also listen to tons of pop. But I do listen to like a fair bit of like weird stuff too. Like I could definitely say one of my favorite artists is One O Tricks Point Never. If anyone out there has ever heard of that guy, he's just an amazing, really avant-garde composer, and electronic madness basically. So it's actually hard for me to think of a sound that I completely don't like, because I'm constantly listening to weird sounds and being like, there's a slight musical quality to that. And in fact, I kind of sometimes make other people in my life be like, what are you talking about? Because I'll be like, oh, those two airplanes passing overhead at the same time are resonating together in a really pleasing way, don't you think? And people will be like, no.
All right. Well, you're boring, I guess. Yeah. Well, go fuck yourself. Yeah, right. Yeah, it sounds cool, right? Like stereo. Cool. Hey, then my next question is the reincarnation question. Kennedy, if you could come back as a plant or a non-human animal, what would you choose?
That's a really good question. I think the low-hanging fruit answer that a lot of people would jump to, and I certainly empathize with, is a cat, because they obviously live amazing lives for the most part. Very, very good lifestyle choices on the behalf of cats. But I actually kind of would want to be a tree, I think.
Hey.
Probably, especially, okay, this would be the coolest thing ever, would be to be like a hazelnut tree with a symbiotic truffle colony growing in my roots. How cool would that be?
Very cool. Yeah, you're supporting life. You are life, experiencing it. I don't want to steal your answer here, but yeah. Never heard that one specifically, and I love the layer you've put upon that. That's a nice little layer. It's like an onion.
Well, I mean, you can't fully separate, once those life forms are joined, you can't fully separate them and even say that they're like two fully distinct life forms because they're in a symbiotic relationship where the fungus provides certain benefits for the tree and the tree provides certain benefits for the fungus. And in exchange for that, the fungus is able to produce truffles, one of the most delightful, highly prized mushrooms in the world. So I don't know. That'd be fun.
That's nice. Double threat. I don't know. Triple threat. Yeah, there's a lot going on there. That's beautiful. So, that's a good one. We've heard tree before. We've heard a specific tree, but nothing like that. Then we come to the God question. Kennedy, one day you find out at the end of your life, it's actually true. Heaven and God, they're real. What would you like to hear God say?
Well, this isn't exactly something to be said, but I've always slightly hoped that the Egyptian thing where all of my organs are going to be weighed in front of me is going to happen. I know that's weird.
I love
But
it.
I've always liked the metaphorical concept of like, were you able to live a life where your heart was light at the end of it? And like that kind of thinking, which is where that comes from. Or are you still weighed down by so many of the things from your life? Kind of. I don't know. That's just like, that's where my mind immediately goes. That'd be cool. And bizarre and weird. And I don't know. I'm kind of a weird, somewhat horror geeky kind of person. So I also can't resist just the weirdness of that scenario.
I like that very much. I love that answer, Kennedy. Fucking beautiful. Yeah, good way of looking at that question. All right then. So let's think of an influential leftist. Define that any way you like. That you would like to meet, be them dead or alive. If they're dead, they would come back from the dead. Just to be clear.
Sure.
I've never specified. It's like, well, you got to meet them, but they're dead. Ha ha! Joke's on you. What a shitty questionnaire.
Damn.
Okay. Yeah.
Destroyed. There's a comedy Bang Bang joke about how everyone can come back to life, that just most people choose not to. And I'm just thinking about that now. Just like, some dead leftist just chooses to come back to life to meet you for a couple of days. And then they're like, I'm going to go back to being dead now. It's better.
That would be frightening.
I think dead included, then it's for sure Thomas Sankara.
Oh, baby. Mm-hmm.
I think, especially because not enough of his ideas were necessarily recorded because of his relatively brief life. Whereas, if he'd had the opportunity to, follow through his vision for Burkina Faso for 10, 20 years, we probably would have some excellent book the way we have for a lot of, those types of thinkers where it's like, here's their reflections on the nature of politics and society, having now sort of like done it on the, that leadership scale. And I think that would have been amazing. And, we never really got anything like that. So I think not only is he one of my favorite leftists, but in particular, he's one that you could just benefit so much from having that opportunity to learn more than what you can learn about him now.
Love it. And he had some great outfits too.
Oh,
yeah,
God,
dude.
fucking
look.
Fashion.
Yeah. It's all about that hat. That little. I got to get one. Okay. If you had that chance, I think I changed my questionnaire, but I didn't change the graphics yet. Oh, I'm a failure. Fuck. Okay. My next question would be, for you is, what would you ask them specifically, if you had any specific questions, what do you think they would think about you or the world and what you've shared with me today, or what do you hope they would say about you?
I would hope that he would like to meet me, but I'm sure realistically he'd be at least mildly underimpressed with me. Like I'm a privileged white leftist living in a very comfortable society and unwilling to give up a certain amount of my comfort. Like most people in America. And I would even say, having done like the punk squatting type stuff, I've been willing to put more of my comfort on the line than the average American. And I'm still willing to admit that I'm not necessarily willing to put tons of my comfort on the line. So yeah. Anyway, I think realistically he'd probably be like, "Yeah, you're a scrub, but I'll talk to you for a minute or whatever." I would hope that if he spent enough time talking to me, he'd be at least a little impressed with some of what I had to say in terms of like, that I'm not a complete knucklehead or something like that, and that I am truly trying to better the world and everyone in it through politics if I can, and that's the real end goal. And I would hope that stuff would shine through, and that he might leave with like a decent impression of me. And best case scenario is that like it would be like a Michael Brooks Lula situation, basically, where like maybe he doesn't think you're like entirely 100% the real deal, but he does respect you. I would take that. Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, if I could ask him about anything, I would just ask him about. I would want to ask him about how to sort of best dismantle imperialism, especially from the philosophical, not even necessarily from the practical, but from the imperialist in our minds. Given like the way that it's changed in the modern day, like I would really want his opinion on that. Like look at how much worse imperialism is now than when you were fighting it, and what do we do? Because I'm fucking scared and confused a lot, and I would love to have a greater mind than mine peer into this. And if anyone understood the evils of imperialism perfectly, it was Thomas Sankara.
Sure. Okay, sorry, I'm muted. We already did some streamer tips earlier, and my chat's making fun of me for being on mute there. But I wanted to make sure we give you time for any questions you had for me. You don't have to ask me any questions, but you have the chance to do so. And also, if there are any questions from chat that you see that you're willing to answer, and you don't have to answer any of them.
I can't see chat very well because of my setup at the moment, but if you think there's any particularly great questions, I'm willing. I'm pretty much an open book, and I'm not afraid to answer anything particular.
Yeah. Got about 3 minutes here.
Yeah, I guess I would just ask you, what held you back for so long on the streaming? Like, what was your biggest obstacle?
Equipment, and also sort of that just the missing component, which was like, hey, just go do it. So I held a fundraiser where I did a bunch of it was a Man in Black streamathon is what I called it. I didn't call it Johnny Cash because I didn't want to get picked up by bots and shit. And I did like 3-4 hours of music or so. I used to be in a Johnny Cash tribute act. Did I already say that twice? Oh my gosh. And I invited my partner on to sing with me, the little June and Johnny. It was adorable. I'm also a trivia host, and so we did like Johnny Cash trivia. I got so fucking drunk by the end of it because my mind was blown how much support I was getting. I raised like $1,700 that night, and it's just sort of like catapulted me to be able to buy a really nice PC and start putting it all together. And ever since then, it's just been a wild ride. And then specifically the past 4, 5, 6 months has been absolutely wild.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. I think doing that kind of fundraising can be really fun and surprisingly effective. That's for sure. Yeah. And just in general, like if you really develop a strong social network, then you'd be surprised how much people might like support you if you ask for help. I know that like um, we got a little bit of help from a friend of mine with some of our equipment for Not Safe for Wonks to like get the streaming setup looking better for everyone. And
Nice.
it's the kind of thing that I wouldn't have necessarily expected, but if you don't ask, you don't know. And I put it out there, and he said, one person in particular stepped up and said, "Hey, I'm just gonna make that happen for you guys. I really believe in what you're doing." So
Look at that. That's incredible.
yeah,
I'm I've very much learned to beg. Let's just put it that way. Twitch is sort of a begging culture, you know. I'm very happy to beg roughly once every hour. Well, Kennedy, I hate to cut this short here because I feel like we're cutting it short because I have so much more I'd love to be able to chat with you about. As I mentioned, we're gonna have you back on. I hope
great.
in a couple weeks. I don't know. We'll see. But I got to say, we've invited you again in the spirit of building leftist unity, power, and strength. You've been an amazing guest in that respect. Just looking forward very much to seeing how this relationship of ours grows and what we can share with each other's audiences. So, Kennedy, I got to thank you again, and we'll let you go. Thank you so much, buddy. Peace now and solidarity.
All right. Thank you so much, comrade, and you take care, and love to come back on in the near future. Just reach out.
All right. Thanks, comrade. I love it. All right. Hey, YouTube. You're watching a clip from my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/iDanSimpson, where you can follow for free and subscribe for only $5 a month. Thanks for watching.